Get ready to harvest the best produce. This is our review of Alpujarras.
Alpujarras is a resource management game set during the Great Arab Agricultural Revolution, and I think this is one of my new favorite Dr. Finn games.
I really enjoyed this game except for the time track mechanic where the last player gets to make the next move. We'll tell you all about it after this quick how to play.
On each turn, players will move their mule to a space and perform the action.
The player that is furthest back on the action track will take the next turn, which means they could end up taking multiple turns in a row.
Players will place farmers in farms and collect one of 5 different types of fruit.
Players collect fruit so that when they reach the market icons, they can sell their fruit to the villages and collect money.
Players continue farming, harvesting, and selling their fruit until all players reach the final market space.
Players add up their money and the player with the most wins. We were sent a copy of the game from Dr. Finn's game so that we could do this review video.
If you'd like to find out more information or to buy a copy of the game, check out the links in the description below.
Just like a lot of other Dr. Finn's games, the mechanics aren't that difficult, but there's a lot of depth to the game. So even though you're just moving around an action track, where you go, when you go, the positioning you're trying to get into, there's a lot of thinking that you have to think about. Even though once you get to a space, it's most likely going to be put a farmer, move a farmer, or work on the canal system. Those are the main actions that you're going to be focused on. However, which space you take and when takes a lot of thought of, ooh, do I want to do that? Or is Lee going to come up behind me and get several actions? Is he going to take the action that I want? Should I jump forward ahead? Should I try to wait and go further back? Trying to figure out the exact timing of what's going to get you the most fruit so that when you get to the market phase, you can have the biggest order in the village and get a market card as well.
After it was all set up, I kind of looked at it and I was envisioning viticulture just because, well, mostly because of the farms, right? Because
there's
you have these little
farms and there's
fields. Yeah, and then fruit. I mean, they even have grapes. So I was like, oh, it's like a, viticulture is more like weightier. And this one's like probably a more intro if you're going to trying to get to viticulture. I could see playing this to get to that, but, I know it's just because of farms probably.
Yeah, the mechanics are a lot different because viticulture is more of a straight up worker placement. This is kind of a worker movement where you're moving along a track. And the main mechanic in this that really makes your brain start to burn is that time track mechanic. And what that means is that the player that is furthest back, so the player that's closest to the starting line, gets to take the next move. So if there are several spots open between that player and the player in front of them, they could end up taking multiple moves. And I like those types of mechanics. I think First and Flight also uses a mechanic like that, a couple other games. And I like them depending on how the board is spread out. With this one, every time you get to a market space or a harvest space, you're gonna stop and wait for everyone to catch up. And I feel at that point, that's when things can kind of change because if you're the first one there, you can then choose to go last in the next section. Or you can go to the furthest spot, get a better action, and then you end up going last, and then maybe not have as many moves in the next section of board. So I like it, but at the same time, I feel like the sections of boards are too small. So how it's broken up is you have these sections of boards, and they can be rearranged. Only the starting line and the ending line are going to be the same every time, but the other ones can be arranged in a different order as long as it always goes market, harvest, and then when you get there, you got to perform those actions. But I just feel like there's too few of actions in each little section. I feel like maybe if they were a complete section or something, I don't know. I just feel like there's not enough time to really jump ahead. And so the main strategy in this game is try to be last. If everyone's doing that strategy, then maybe would it be different? I don't know. We'd have to play a game where everyone's strategy is, I just want to be last. We're all fighting for last to find out.
Yeah, I just feel like these little boards, right? The very end, the market or harvest phase, it didn't seem too enticing. Like, yeah, I guess if you were the first one there, you could pick the furthest spot, which would mean that you would go last on the next little board. There were only a handful of times where I was just like, nah, I don't need that. like it wasn't as enticing for me to get it. So I was like, okay. I just felt like if we all just knew like, okay, you went 1, I'm obviously going to go to spot 2, he's going to go to 3, and then now you're going to go to spot 4. Like that just seemed like the normal thing. And then when it broke that pattern, I wasn't like mind blown, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's like, okay, let's just go here then. I don't know. I felt like even if you didn't follow that, just grab the next open one so that you maximize your spots, you still would have been fine.
The main goal of the game is to get as much money as possible. You're going to get money from selling and getting the delivery tokens, which will give you money at the end of the game. Plus, you can earn coins as you're going throughout the game. Plus, you can get bonus coins according to the market card. If you sell at a certain time, if the fruit's higher on the market card, you can get money that way. Plus, you can sell the other cards. There's a lot of way to get money. And I do feel like that is one thing about this game is we always had close games. No one ever had to run away with this game, even if someone was always getting lucky and or having the better strategy of always being last and getting the better turns, and it looked like they were doing better. In the end, when we counted up all the points, it was like, oh, well, it still ended up a pretty close game. So I do feel like it's very balanced. It's just as you're playing, it doesn't have that feeling of, oh, I'm doing a lot, I'm doing this. You always kind of feel like, oh, I'm not doing as well as I should be doing. Even if at the end you're gonna be okay, it doesn't feel that way while you're playing. And I think that's kind of the drawback of the time track mechanic, with that person always being able to take multiple actions.
To some players who are maybe newer to board games, I think this is like just the right amount of digestible moves and what you have to keep track of and what you can do next. Like it's pretty forgiving for like brand new players that are just getting into board games. So depending on our game nights, I think this would probably be one at the top of my head. And like, okay, let's try this. Let's like, kind of gauge where your level is. I know I said when it first hit the table, like it reminded me of viticulture, probably just because farming. But another one, like one of our favorites, is parks. And I think that's what probably like captivated me. I'm like, oh, cool, like move to a spot, take a move, like, and people can kind of block you. So that was already cemented in my head about that move. So it felt really familiar, and I already knew like half the game already.
I really like the set collection, resource management, recipe fulfillment aspect of it. So you're going around collecting fruit, and then you're going to be turning them in to get the delivery tokens, which will require a certain amount of the same fruit. Or you can have the cards, which can have different fruit that you need. It's very rewarding when you have the right amount and you can get the delivery token and one of the cards. And especially if you can do that at each market phase, you really feel like, all right, I have this game, I understand it, I'm pretty good at this game. What did you not like about this game?
Kind of just going back to the track. I mean, let's say I went first for the next piece. I didn't feel like the very first spot was like very rewarding that I just wanted to go there, or like really any of the other spots too. I also didn't want to jump to the very end, right, and be last for the next one. I don't know. Some of these spots just didn't really entice me to just switch up the monotony of like, okay, you're 1, I'm 2, you're 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Like nothing really motivated me to break that pattern.
So I don't really like the table presence of the outside track. I like the board, it's very colorful. I like the pieces, they're very colorful as you're playing. But then you have these boards, and I know that you mix them up to add the variability in there to make the games different each time. So you kind of always change up the order of where you're going to be landing. But since the actions are so similar, I don't think it really changes it up that much. And so you're just left with these pieces that kind of shift around and they kind of move around. So by the end of the game, you're just left with a blah of this track around the outside. So I just don't really like the table presence of the track that you're going around and moving your mule around it. It just bothers my OCD a little bit. All right, so even though we both said things we didn't like, I think honestly the thing we don't like the most, and it's with a lot of Dr. Finn's game, is we can't pronounce the name. We're saying Alpujarras. We're assuming that that's how you say it because it's about the Arab Revolution and that it's not the Spanish version like Alpujarras or something like that. I think you need to come up with some easier names to say, Dr. Finn. I think the games, you need to think about that marketability of it.
Yeah, if it was just in the book real quick, it's like, all right, just so we know you're going to ask, like real bold, this is how you say it. It's like, all right. Like I said at the top, I think this is probably one of my new favorite Dr. Finn games. I like all the little pieces, like different colors, bright colors. It has an okay table presence. There's some tweaks that I would make, but as far as like an intro game and probably like, going towards the beginners or like that level of players that you play with, that they are now included, I think that's probably what's drawing me to this, just to welcome new people to the craft. So overall, I'm going to give this an 8.
I did really enjoy this game. I know it sounds like we have a lot of criticism of it, but I think that's just because we're finding minor things in a game that we really enjoyed and we're like, oh, I wish it did this and this instead of this. That would make it so much better. So overall, I still really enjoyed this game. I think it's a lot of fun. I don't think it's my favorite Dr. Finn's game, but it's right up there. So overall, I'm going to give it a 7. And that was our review of Alpujarras.
What'd you think? Are you ready to experience the fruits of your labor with this game? Let us know in the comments below.
Once again, we'd like to thank Dr. Finn's Game for sending us a copy so that we could do this review video. If you'd like to find out more information, check out the links in our description below. And as always, if you're enjoying our content, please like this video, subscribe to our channel.
Until next time, I'm Lee.
And I'm Kenny. And go party like a board gamer.